Hello, I'm Andy King, technical editor of Good Woodworking magazine, and today we're going to do a little bit of work on basic workshop rotation with your machinery. Again, like with a table saw, you need to check your fence. Obviously, what comes off of there goes underneath. Anything out of square comes out of square when it comes back out. So you need to check that first and foremost. Again, the other thing you need to look at as well is position of the fence to what you're working on. Now, this all depends on what you normally work. Now, I was always taught, ideally, to keep the fence at the back as much as possible. For the simple reason is, that is where you can put all your stuff that's going to destroy the blades first and foremost. Plywood, MDF, anything like that. If it goes over at the back of the blades, it leaves the front of the blades clear for any timber, any good timber, that sort of stuff. It gives you more use out of your blades, and it means that you can invariably make a better use of them before they go back to be sharpened up. So I still work on that principle. So as this is a good set of blades in here, I'll move the fence back as close as I can to the edge and work from there. Again, I'll check for square, and that's good. Check obviously both ends just to make sure that's good, so we can work from there. Now with the components, the principle is, it goes under the bridge guard, again, enough so you can't get your finger under. So again, you get it down low enough that the work goes through, and it stays enough so that you can't get underneath it. Now you can put the bridge guard right across. That way then, it's fully covered. You can, now I don't know whether the laws have changed. It used to be the case that you could pull it off enough so that when you worked underneath like that, you could then put it up on its edge and do the edge again. Again, leaving that gap so you can't go into it. So you can actually do the two facing edges in basically what's one pass, so you don't have to readjust anything. So that's the situation. Now again, as with anything, you're looking at your timber and thinking, right, okay, I need to be looking at the best way to put this over the planer. Look at the way your grain patterns are running, knowing that the blades are coming into you this way, so you don't want to be going up against the grain because it'll tear it out. So you want to be working with the grain so that it keeps it clean as it goes over. Again, you don't want to take a massive great cut off because it's not fair on the timber, because it'll just tear it up. A couple of passes are better than one great big one, it always is. Might take a couple of, a little bit longer, 5 minutes longer, but it's always worth it just for a better finish on your timber. So again, you look at what you need to do, look at where you're looking at, and you're ready to go. So again, safety equipment on, dust extraction on. You can see there when I work the timber over, what you don't want to be doing is keeping all your pressure on this side as it comes off the other side of the table. Because what you'll end up doing is, if you've got certainly if you put it over that way and it's dished upwards, as you push it over, all you're invariably doing is letting it just keep on riding up and up and up, and it'll come out the same way as it's gone in. You should, in theory, try and keep it concave side down. So that any hollow is here, so you take off end to end. As it comes through, it bears on there. This end still bears, so it should come through, take a cut, start to miss where it's hollow, take this part, and then the next pass will hopefully take it all out. So you do a couple of passes like that and it should get rid of it. Likewise for twist, again, if you've got twist where it's rocking sort of like that, if that's a bearing point there, you want to try and keep pressure on that side so it takes it off and then levels up this side a little bit better. And as it comes through, keep the pressure on there. And then on this side where it's bearing now, it should do the same thing and take that off, and it'll take the twist out. But again, the principle is, with planer on a table, is you keep the pressure on the table on this side to start with until it starts to cut. As it starts to get through, you walk your fingers over the top of the bridge guard, Keep the pressure on the outfeed now, because this is your reference face now. This is straight, because it's coming off the cutter. So what goes onto this table is as straight off the cutters as it should be. So keep your pressure on there, and anything then, any discrepancy on this side is taken out by keeping the pressure there, and that gives you the straight timber you need then. So the principle is, as I say, you push it through, let it start the cut. As it emerges the other side, just walk the pressure over and keep the pressure on the outfeed. Much the same as with a hand plane, where when you start the plane, your pressure is on the timber on the top on the front, and then as you progress through the cut, then you change the pressure to the back of the plane so that it keeps it nice and straight all the way through. Your pressure, similar with this, your pressure is on the front to start with as it feeds into the blades, it goes over, the pressure goes onto the outfeed table, keeps the pressure all the way through. That way then, any discrepancy here is taken out by the knives, and it should, in theory, leave a nice, straight, clean timber. Okay, so we've done our face. Now, the edge, again, is just a matter of up against the fence and over. Now, your face and edges are the be-all and end-all of any work, really. You should stick to a face and edge. In this situation, I don't. All I'm looking for, really, is to get a square face and edge to work from. It's just a reference initially. My actual marking of faces and edges, when it comes to the actual setting out of the job I'm going to do, comes later on. This is just initially to get a square face and edge to get my stock prepared. Then the face and edge marks become at a later date. So we just need to basically get this dimension to the sizes we need, and we'll work from there and reassess what's going to come out of where. Such as this situation where you've got a little knot, you could look at that and think, well, I'd put that to the back. But in actual fact, if that's a decent piece of timber there, and you could lose that in a rebate, it's going to come out. That leaves you a nice clean face. Whereas on the other side, you may find, although not in this situation, you might find you've got another flaw in there, which you may have to live with. So you can actually reverse what you were considering to be your face and edge to start with, just by looking at things you can actually remove at the next phase of your machining process. Okay, so at the moment now, we are at what would be classed as face and edge stage. Now, in actual fact, that isn't face and edge, as I mentioned earlier. This is more reference. What it is basically getting to a stage where you can then reassess your face and edge marks once you've got to commit to your actual component sizes. So all I've done really is I've looked at the timber and thought, okay, it's bending that way maybe, so that's the side that goes down to take front and clean it out properly. Maybe it's got a little bit of twist in it. It's that sort of situation. Likewise for the edge mark, you look down the edge, and again, you're looking to keep hollows down to the table to get that clean first. As I say, you can, if you're clever enough, do it, but the trouble is, it's that initial rock you're trying to get out. So the actual traditional and proper method of doing it is hollow side down to the table. So your hollow's in the middle, you take the ends off first, and that gets you back to where you are. Now all that is done basically, as I say, is giving me straight reference faces, two clean faces. Both should give you square when you look at them, so you basically check that. Obviously that's just basically referencing off of that. So if your fence is square, technically your timber should be square. So once you're at that stage, you then move on through the thicknesser. This takes you down to your actual finished sizes, and then you go to your spindle moulders or your marking up stage, depending on the project you're working on. So we'll just go to that next level now. Okay, we need to now obviously put ourselves into thicknessing mode. Now, depending on which machines you've got, some things stay on, some things come off. This is where some planers I like, some I don't. I'm a great fan of what was called the classic over-under machine, whereas you went over the top, this way, straight underneath the other way, nothing ever came off. The biggest problem we've got nowadays is the new dust extraction laws, this, that and the other, micro switches for safety, this sort of thing. Nowadays, there is sometimes, and pretty well invariably all the time, you've actually got to do some work to change between modes. This one isn't too bad actually, it's just a matter of taking the bridge guard back. Now, I would much prefer, if possible, to just swing that back and be able to lift the tables. Now, I tried this earlier and it won't come up for whatever reason. I don't quite know why, unless it may just do it now. You see, you've got this little bit here, it actually locks on the fence. So you've got to take the fence off, which is a bit of a pain, but had they been able to just move this bracket back slightly, just enough so that this would clear, but the trouble is you've got these big lugs and it won't do it. So you've got to take the fence off. So the principle is you just let go of the two levers that lock the fences, that lock the beds down. This one comes up first. This is called a gull wing design because it comes up obviously like a gull's wing as it comes out. So sometimes you just do one, this one has two. This gives you access obviously to the working area. So you've got the cutter block there, your serrated roller here, your outfeed roller here, which is rubber, and your anti-kickback pulls. Now what they do is obviously the timber goes in, it grabs the timber. So if it does start to kick back, then what happens is that stops it, prevents anything sort of flying back out the machine at you. So basically you switch this over here, that clicks into there. Now there's usually a micro switch on here, so if this isn't in position, the machine won't start. So you've basically got to put the hood into place. So once you're at that stage, what I'll do now is I'll swing it around, obviously, because I now need to be working the timber from the opposite direction that I was, and it's easier for the camera so you can see what's going on. So I'll just swing it round now. Okay, now when you're thicknessing your timber, as you can see, we've got two different thicknesses here, obviously. This is your door, this is your frame. So we've got the two components here. Basically, the last thing you want to be doing is doing this dimension first. You always do your thickest dimension first. The reason being, the thinner this gets, when it actually goes through the machine itself, it's got a little bearing surface to rest upon, and it's going to start to try and tip and turn. So keep that as thick as possible for as long as possible. So obviously take down what will be your widest component, take that down first and work down through, and then you flip it, and your final cuts are these ones. And that works with whether it's that thick, this thick, anything. It's just good standard practice to get into. So again, we're looking at, these are pretty well the same dimensions thickness wise, so I just need to set the machine to that thickness. Okay, so we're now at the thicknessing stage, so we're all set up ready to go to take our first cut. Just need to make sure we're all okay. Now again, what we're looking to achieve on this is obviously, this is the two clean faces we've done. This face is obviously down to the table. Again, we need to look at grain direction, and again, we want to make sure that when it goes in, it's not going to tear the grain. So you look at which way the cutter block rotates, push it in accordingly, and away you go. Okay, so although these are all now at consistent thicknesses to each other, what I always do, there's two schools of thought. Some people will tell you take equal off either side, all the way around, which is good practice actually, because you can actually sort of put an imbalance into it, because obviously the outside is going to be drier than the inside face. So if you try and keep it balanced by removing equal amounts, it's good practice. But what I also do is, because this one's only taken a couple of skims off anyway, because I've cut it pretty well to dimension sizes, quite close to it. But with this, what you've got is, which is what I always do, is I'll do a final turn of the timber, because I've now got my parallel face, and it's come off what was classed as a reference face already off of the thickness, off the planer bed. I'll then turn it upside down, so the actual first face I dressed on the planer bed will now go under the thicknesser, because no matter how good a machinist you are, you'll never be able to be as consistent as a power feed on a planer thicknesser. So any sort of stutters you put through it going through will show as slight ripples on the surface. So putting it through there again, you'll still get those ripples because you've still got the power feed, but what you'll get is consistency all the way through. So it will actually take out any slight little bits you've done where you've gone a little bit too quick over it, and you've got a big sort of gouging ripple effect, if you see what I mean. So it gives you a more consistent finish. So I'll give it one last cut, just to get it down, just to clean up these top faces, which was actually my initial reference face. Likewise, when I turn it through that dimension, the same thing again. I'll clean up that face, one final cut, turn it over, and do the same on that side. That gives me a uniform finish that's come straight off of the power feed of the planer itself. It won't affect the straightness of the timber, because that surface has already been addressed this way up on the surface table. So it won't do anything other than replicate what's already there.